I need this job. If the principal comes back and sees I'm gone, I'm gonna get fired.
I know, but you gotta see this.
Marco, why today? I'm so getting fired.
2023 was a jam-packed year for video games. It felt like every month there was a new Game of the Year contender releasing, and every genre was well represented. Most years will feature a handful of Game of the Year worthy games, but this was no normal year. I didn't get to play every single Game of the Year candidate, and instead of rushing 3 games just so I could say I beat them and played them, felt wrong to me. Games like Alan Wake 2, Armored Core 6, Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, and even Starfield fell through the cracks for me. My name is Mike, and these are all the 2023 new releases that I played. There will be no major story spoilers discussed. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is only the second Zelda game I have ever played, and I can't imagine going back to the older entries in the series. Tears of the Kingdom was the first new release that I played this year. While playing this game, I constantly said to myself, this is the game of the year. Everything else is just fighting for second place. And boy, was I wrong. Nintendo looked at Breath of the Wild and said, how do we make this even better? And somehow, they worked their Nintendo magic and delivered us a game that is now the definitive Legend of Zelda experience, in my opinion. And the best game on the Nintendo Switch. Much like its predecessor, Tears does not hold your hand much and sets you free in the Kingdom of Hyrule. But this time, the map is a beautiful sky islands and the dark and mysterious depths. Despite this, I found myself spending the majority of my time on the mainland for my adventure. Tears swapped out the abilities from Breath of the Wild for some new game-changing abilities. Master Hand, Fuse, Ascend, and Recall. Fusing weapons together was always such a blast, as you would constantly be creating more ridiculous weapons to deal with the challenging enemies that await you. Ascend and Recall made my time in shrines infinitely better, as instead of struggling to figure out what the game wants me to do to solve the puzzle, I can now use the new abilities to come up with my own creative solutions, and then laugh at myself when I would go on YouTube and look up the correct way to solve the shrine. I also found myself far more engaged in the story of the game this time around, and loved searching for the Tears memories all over the map. Despite all of the high praise I'm giving this game, it still is my runner-up for Game of the Year. From the runner-up at the Game Awards to a game that I believe got snubbed from the Video Game Awards. Final Fantasy XVI was the game that if it came out any other year, I think it would have been one of the 6 nominees for Game of the Year. When I first heard about Final Fantasy XVI, the story and world was getting compared to Game of Thrones, and that immediately got my attention. As a huge Game of Thrones fan, I was eager to play through a story with the same vibes as one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Final Fantasy XVI nailed the Game of Thrones vibes almost immediately, and I knew I was in for a roller coaster ride of a story. The game centers around our main character, Clive Rossfield, voiced by the incredibly talented Ben Starr. Clive is such a strong protagonist, and I really felt all of the emotions he felt, thanks again to great writing and incredible voice acting. Throughout the story, you meet a huge cast of characters that help make this world feel alive, and helps carry the game's story. It could have easily been a mess and hard to follow, but thankfully, the devs at Square Enix implemented the active time lore feature that allows you to at any point in a cutscene pause and see all of the characters' names and important information, as well as the locations featured in the cutscene. It is a feature that I think should be in every game going forward that has a story. The first 30 to 40 hours of this game is some of my favorite world building and storytelling in any game. Special shout out to Sid for being my favorite side character this year, and I think Clive Rossfield is my personal favorite video game character this year. As far as the combat goes, I do think it can be hit or miss depending on the situation. The icon abilities that you unlock throughout the game were awesome, and it really made the combat feel much deeper compared to the earlier sections of the game. But when you're waiting for all of your abilities to recharge, it can feel kind of dull unless you really get good at chaining combo attacks together. Where the combat really shines is during the boss fights. These are some of the most jaw-dropping spectacles and really helped highlight how massive the stakes are in this story. Final Fantasy XVI's incredible soundtrack gives more impact to every story beat and makes every boss fight feel even more epic than they already are. I would find myself humming the various tracks to myself whenever I wasn't playing the game. This is a soundtrack that I won't forget anytime soon. Any negatives that I have for Final Fantasy XVI are so heavily outweighed by the positives of this game. Diablo 4 was the first Diablo game that I have played to completion. Loot grind video games are normally not my jam, but Diablo 4 was a ton of fun once I got into the thick of the action. Clearing the way through a dungeon or stronghold are some of my favorite things to do in the game. It's not all roses for Diablo 4, and with Diablo 4 being a live service game, it's hard for me to enjoy the repetitiveness of the gameplay loop. I think that the main campaign and side content are fun to play through, but after a couple times going through the same dungeons, I knew that this game was not a game that I wanted to keep playing. This may sound super negative, but I did really enjoy my time playing Diablo 4 and thinking that it is one of the best games of the year. I was left satisfied with the 60 plus hours that I spent in Sanctuary, and I will be gladly hopping back in when the Vessel of Hatred expansion drops later this year. While playing through the campaign of Diablo with my friends, I found myself in need of a single player experience just for myself. That led to me finally playing Highfi Rush, after hearing so many people rave about how unique and fun this game is. Highfi Rush is a rhythm action game made by Tango Gameworks, who also made the horror games Evil Within 1 and 2. So this was quite the departure for the studio, and the decision to go in a new direction with a brand new IP was the right call in my opinion. Highfi Rush stars Chai, who participates as one of the volunteers for Project Armstrong, when suddenly he gets accidentally fused with his music player and is labeled a defect and is hunted down by Vandalay Technologies. This all leads to a fun story with interesting side characters that will join you on your journey and even assist you in combat. Music is front and center in Highfi Rush as you try to string combos together to the beat of the music as you find yourself smashing your way through waves of robotic enemies and challenging boss fights. Highfi Rush's art style is my personal favorite art style of the year, and every level is a treat to the eyes. Highfi Rush may not be my number one game of the year, but it might actually be the game I would recommend to people the most thanks to its short runtime, easy to play but hard to master combat, and again, gorgeous art style. From a brand new IP to arguably the most iconic IP of all time, Star Wars Jedi Survivor captures everything I love about Star Wars. From the galaxy-trotting story to the lively planets, Respawn Entertainment just gets what makes Star Wars special for so many people. Survivor picks up 5 years after the events of Fallen Order as we find our hero Cal Kestis as a much more confident Jedi as he continues his fight against the evil Empire. The story is once again carried by Cal and the rest of the Mantis crew as Grease, Merrin, Seer, and everyone's favorite droid BD-1. I personally felt that Fallen Order had a stronger narrative than Survivor, but I really loved the direction the series took by the time the credits rolled. Jedi Survivor is much more of an open world compared to Fallen Order, and it takes full advantage of the increased size. Survivor is jam-packed with side quests, bounties, and collectibles to find. The combat is where Survivor truly stands out. The Souls-like gameplay of Fallen Order is back in Survivor and offers new lightsaber stances to use, as well as the ones that you used in Fallen Order. Each lightsaber stance has its own skill tree, so you really are able to build the cowl that suits your playstyle best. I tried out each stance as they became available, but found myself sticking to the single saber and double-bladed stances. Survivor really ramps up the difficulty the further you get in the game as iconic enemies from Star Wars try to take you down. Jedi Survivor is the Star Wars game that I dreamed about playing when I was younger, and I cannot wait to see what Respawn does in the next installment.
Got you, traitor.
2023 was obviously an amazing year for AAA single-player games, but I wanted to take some time out and talk about 3 indie games that I played this year. First up is Cocoon, an adventure puzzle game that has you pressing one button for the entire game to solve puzzles as you make your way through different worlds that exist in orbs that you use to solve increasingly challenging puzzles. This gameplay is from the opening moments of the game as to not spoil the puzzles later on, as it was so satisfying to finally figure out what the game wants you to do with each orb to help you reach that next destination. The game does have combat in the form of the occasional boss fight, but besides that, the game is strictly solving puzzles and finding collectibles in the form of moon ancestors that are easy to miss if you aren't actively seeking them out. The game saves your progress in percentages, so you could go back to sections to find the moon ancestors at any time without having to backtrack. If you like puzzle games, then Cocoon needs to be at the top of your list. From the creators of Life is Strange comes the puzzle climbing game Desant. Desant is the only game that I was able to roll credits in one play session. Desant takes place in a civilization that has long been abandoned, as you uncovered what happened through letters and conch shells that allow you to hear sounds from the past. The music is calming and adventurous as you climb your way through gorgeous locales. The climbing mechanics felt so satisfying, and the developers really made sure that you feel in control of every movement you make. Desant is the perfect game to play on a rainy afternoon when all you want to do is vibe out and get immersed in a mysterious world. Sea of Stars is by far my favorite indie game of the year. The first word that comes to my mind to describe Sea of Stars is charm. Sea of Stars' story follows 2 solstice warriors, Zale and Valir, who use the power of the sun and moon known as eclipse magic to stop the evil Fleshmancer from unleashing his monstrous creations upon the world. This roughly 30-hour experience has you traveling all across the various islands fighting enemies in exciting turn-based encounters, all to the backdrop of a beautiful retro-inspired art style and soundtrack. I will be able to instantly recognize tracks from the soundtrack as they perfectly fit the world of Sea of Stars. If it wasn't for Final Fantasy XVI Cid, my favorite side character of the year would be the best boy, Garl. He is the heart and soul of the story, and I cannot imagine this game without the warrior cook. Sea of Stars is a game you do not want to sleep on. And just a friendly reminder, all of these indie games are available on Xbox Game Pass, so you can play all of these games risk-free. Insomniac Games have been the MVPs for Sony's PlayStation 5 console, putting out banger after banger with Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and in 2023, putting out their latest mega hit, Spider-Man 2. Nearly everything in the sequel to 2018 Spider-Man has been improved on, and the game is a web-slinging thrill ride from start to finish, with excellent voice acting performances from Yuri Lowenthal and the rest of the spectacular cast. The story picks up 10 months after the events of Miles Morales, and while I love the story, especially the small story moments between Peter and Harry, I felt that the overall story didn't hit as hard as the first game. Although, to be fair, the first game is my favorite non-comic book Spider-Man story, so this game's story needed to be perfect for me to change my mind. This is still one of my favorite stories of the year, and has some of my favorite moments and set pieces in video games. The opening Sandman sequence is the only spoilers I will show and talk about, but just know if you haven't played this game yet, then you're in store for some amazing moments. I love the dynamic that Peter and Miles have, as they truly see each other as equals, both call each other Spider-Man, which is just awesome. Seeing both Pete and Miles at different stages of their Spider-Man careers create a spectacular dynamic. The story would be nothing without stellar visuals and a score that captures Spider-Man perfectly. The combat and traversal have both been enhanced and make the game so much fun to play for hours on end. Gone are the days of pulling up the gadget wheel and selecting which to use while the action is paused, and now all the gadgets are button assigned so you never have to stop from beating up your enemies. The one area where I feel the combat took a dip was in the stealth. I felt that it was far too easy to take down an entire room of thugs without getting spotted, especially when you'd have all the thugs hanging up and you're just wondering how did they not notice anyone. But I have only positive things to say about the traversal in Spider-Man 2. First off, the speed at which you swing is already faster, making it quicker to get from Brooklyn to the suburbs of Queens. And the web wings are a true game changer as you soar down city blocks through wind tunnels that send you at speeds never thought to be possible in a Spider-Man game. The speed at which you can get around the city renders fast travel pointless, and besides, who doesn't love web swinging around New York City? The improved web swinging makes going from main mission to side mission to collectibles a joy. The love and care showed by Insomniac in every piece of content is on full display here. The main missions are full of breathtaking set pieces and emotional character moments. The side missions blend so well into the main story that you'll want to do everything the game has to offer, and the collectible items lead to a worthwhile reward for all Spider-Man fans to enjoy. There's not much more I can say about this game without diving into spoilers, but just know that all 30 hours spent getting the Platinum Trophy was an amazing time. Balers Gate 3 is the only game in this video that I have not finished, and I should mention before going any further that all the gameplay captured is from an alternate campaign, so I won't spoil events in Act 2. If I finish the game, then maybe I would be talking about how Balers Gate 3 is my runaway game of the year, but as of now, I'm roughly 70 hours into the game and was about halfway through Act 2, and Balers Gate 3 has almost all the ingredients needed to be not just game of the year, but my favorite game of all time. Balers Gate 3 is packed with a gripping main questline and some of the best side quests in gaming. I could not tell the difference at times between what was the main quest and what was a side quest. It all just blended seamlessly together to create a rich narrative where your choices actually matter, and every conversation and decision you make along the way has consequences that will be felt. The characters all feel like real people with their own goals, desires, and motives, and they're all brilliantly acted by one of the best voice actor ensembles ever. Balers Gate 3 has the best character creator in gaming, and it's not even close. Larian Studios lets you choose from 12 different classes from Dungeons & Dragons. I'm not even going to mention how many subclasses there are to choose from. There's 11 races to pick from, 11 backgrounds, and different abilities based on which class you choose. And the best part is that all of these choices matter and affect how the story plays out and how characters interact with you. My half-orc barbarian Brock teamed up with the Blade of Frontiers Will, a human warlock who made a pact with a higher power. Everyone's crush Shadowheart, a half-elf cleric who's hiding some dark secrets, and Brock's best friend and ride or die, fellow barbarian Karlak the Tiefling. The journey that I went on with these characters felt so personal and unique as I laughed, cried, and intimidated my way through some dicey situations, all with these incredible characters by my side. You're probably asking, why the hell is this game not my game of the year? The one thing that kept me from making progress and finishing the game was the combat. I've tried out D&D numerous times over the years, and the one thing I couldn't enjoy was the combat. Now, I don't think the combat in Balers Gate 3 is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I actually think the combat is incredible. The amount of freedom that you have at your disposal is overwhelming at first, but it's so satisfying once you start understanding what you can and cannot do. Again, I need to stress how much I loved interacting with every character in this world, and I will be finishing Balers Gate 3 for the story and the characters, and hopefully by the time credits roll I'll be a fan of the combat and start making plans for my next campaign.
Shit. No, it's not what it looks like. I swear.
I've never played more than a couple of minutes of any of the From Software Souls games. They always pique my interest, but I can never get past the brutal difficulty of every enemy encounter. But when I saw the trailer for Lies of P at Summer Games Fest, I knew that I really wanted to play this game. When I found out that it was a Souls-like, I was initially disappointed and felt that there was no way I'd be able to play and beat this game, and I was especially not eager to spend $60 on a game that I might play for an hour or two, and then realize I can't get past the first boss, and that I wasted my money on a game that I'll never play. And then the game was announced for Xbox Game Pass, and all of my worries about that went away. I told myself that if I can beat Lies of P, then I will play all the From Software games, and boy did I beat this game. I knew this game was going to be one of my favorites when I was making my way through St. Frangelico's Cathedral, and then I knew this was my game of the year once I finally defeated the King of Puppets. After spending an hour or two endlessly dying over and over again, it finally clicked. From that point forward, I was no longer scared of what was around the corner, but instead I was excited to find out what the next challenge was going to be. With every death, I learned something about the enemy, and I never found myself blaming the game, but instead immediately recognizing that I was too aggressive, or dodged too early, or simply I mistimed a parry. And speaking of parries, parrying enemies and breaking their weapons down was the most satisfying gameplay mechanic I've seen in quite some time. Everything about this game felt so satisfying to play, and I absolutely adored the level design for each of the game's 11 chapters. Each area of the game was expertly designed, and I loved finding collectibles and stumbling on mini-boss fights. From the city streets of Krat to the barren swamps, the level design and art direction are both top-notch. I loved taking a moment to soak in and look at how incredible the plagued city of Krat and the rest of the world of Lies of P looks. The characters that take up residence at Hotel Krat, which serves as the main hub base, is packed with interesting characters, all with really interesting backstories. The story of Lies of P is based on the story of Pinocchio, with a dark twist and several turns to present a fresh and original take on the character. You also don't need to have any knowledge about Pinocchio to enjoy this game, as the story is presented in a very straightforward way. Getting back to the combat of Lies of P, there are tons of different weapons to choose from that suit playstyles of all varieties. Lies of P allows you to mix and match different weapon blades and handles to craft the ultimate puppet slaying weapon and amulets that grant unique abilities. You can use your ergo to upgrade P's stats like vitality, aka health, vigor, stamina, motivity, aka strength, capacity, aka weight, technique, aka dexterity, and advanced, aka arcane. I prioritized vitality and motivity and would periodically upgrade my vigor and capacity, but I really would probably play any playstyle going forward. I found the pipe wrench and combined that with the police baton, and I really just rolled with that for the rest of the game. You also have the Legion arm, which is special equipment that you can modify to your build. I used the Fulminous Legion arm, which allowed me to get up and close with my enemies and blast them with a powerful electric attack. But you can also pick Legion arms that are more defensive or ranged. There's a lot of variety with it. There's then the Fable Arts, which are the weapon skills that are bound to specific weapons and handles, and they pack a powerful punch, and they just look really flashy and cool. Lastly, there's the P organ skill tree that unlocks passive and active abilities. And all of this would mean nothing if the game was clunky and unresponsive, but thankfully the combat is incredible. I feel in complete control of P, and I can't say enough good things about how good it feels to nail multiple parries in a row, especially against the harder bosses towards the end of the game. 2023 was one of, if not the greatest year for video games ever. Balers Gate 3 may be the best game of the year and absolutely deserves all of the awards and acclaim from critics and fans alike. But for me, Lies of P is my favorite game of the year and one of my favorite games of all time. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching till the end. Going forward, I just wanted to talk about me streaming. The first stream will be starting in the coming days, and I will be playing Alan Wake 2 to kick things off, and then I will be going through all of the From Software Souls games, starting with Demon Souls and ending with Elden Ring, as well as playing a Balers Gate 3 co-op run. Once that gets started, we'll be playing 1 to 2 days a week for Balers Gate 3. Again, thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and check me out on Twitch and TikTok.